Today was the first day of formal testimony in the newly inaugurated impeachment inquiry, the first since that formal inquiry was announced by Speaker Pelosi. And despite his best attempts, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo could not stop it from happening. The White House could not stop it from happening. So today, Kurt Volker, the former State Department envoy to Ukraine, a man who is named in the whistleblower complaint, gave testimony to 3 House committees. And by most accounts, it was damning for the president and was damning for his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. I should tell you, Kurt Volker went in to testify at around 9:30 this morning. He literally just left an hour ago, testified for 9.5 hours before those committees. Congressman Gerry Connolly, who is in that position, joins us shortly to tell us what he learned. But Volker's not the only big witness who will speak to those committees. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Marie Yovanovitch, who was recalled from her mission in Ukraine, is scheduled to give a deposition to the committee next week. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal reports that Trump ordered her removed after Giuliani complained she was blocking the attempted investigation into Joe Biden, among other things. Remember, it was just yesterday that Giuliani admitted to passing along some weird propaganda packet full of conspiracy theories to the State Department, some of which were used to smear the former Ukrainian ambassador Yovanovitch. Joining me now is one of the members of Congress who was at the deposition of the former Ukrainian special envoy today, Democratic Congressman Gerry Connolly of Virginia. He's a member of both the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, what'd you hear today?
Well, I heard some chilling things, but what I mostly heard, Chris, was corroborative evidence of the whistleblower complaint, and for that matter, factual backup for the actual transcript of the July 25th phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky.
After listening to Volker, do you feel like you have a better sense of the scope of this effort, which reporting now indicates was not just the president on a phone call and Giuliani running around meeting with people, but actually quite deeply involved Volker and his colleagues at the State Department?
Yes. I think this is really a grave moment, it seems to me, for the United States. When President Trump is able to basically corrupt the entire apparatus of our diplomatic corps and of our foreign policy to bend it to his sordid desire to get dirt on a political opponent. And now we know it's not limited to Ukraine. It occurred with respect to President Xi of China. And of course, we know in the 2016 campaign, it had occurred in the open with the government of Russia. Where does this end? Is it now going to be an accepted norm that a president, whoever the incumbent is lucky enough to be, gets to use the entire apparatus of our government for nasty partisan political purposes to destroy any possibility of a viable political opponent? That's not how a democracy works.
I wonder, I don't know how much you can tell us about what you heard today. Obviously, it happened in closed session. Can you confirm the text message that we've read from the chief of mission in which the current chief of mission, Mr. Taylor, I believe, in Ukraine, who says it's crazy that we are withholding aid for a political purpose?
I can, and I think the chronology there is also very important, the sequence. That text was written before the whistleblower complaint. So for Republicans to try to argue that this blew apart the narrative and totally destroyed the case being made, that's false. He made that linkage before anyone knew about a whistleblower complaint making the same linkage.
So I want to be clear here, because I think this is important. This individual is the chief of mission right now, who's, as far as I understand, currently running the embassy in Ukraine because we don't have a formal ambassador. Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
I think it's Bill Taylor.
Yeah, Bill Taylor. So he's the one who says in writing in a text, his understanding from his perch in Kiev as the U.S. chief of mission in the U.S. embassy is that what is happening is that we are withholding aid in order to extract a promise the Ukrainians will undertake a political hit job for the president.
That's correct. And I think we got to call this what it is. If the Republicans don't want to call it quid pro quo, no problem. It's extortion. And extortion is not only morally wrong and an abuse of office, it's illegal.
Do you have a sense of what Volker's role was in this after hearing him for 9.5 hours about whether he was a willing party to this, he was being dragged along? What's your sense?
In the session I attended this morning, about an hour and a half, Chris, My sense was this was a forthright professional who had real misgivings about some of the activities going on, like the suspension of military aid. He was totally puzzled by that, he said. Like the rogue activities of Giuliani, who was buying crackpot theories. Like the false narrative about why the prosecutor in Ukraine was being nudged out by people like Biden and the EU. It was precisely the opposite of what Trump is trying to have you believe, because he wouldn't prosecute. But I am really troubled to learn subsequently that he found himself nonetheless trying to shake down the president, the new president of the Ukraine, to sign a document promising he would do this political dirty work for Trump. That is deeply troubling to me and seems at variance with the man I was hearing this morning.
All right, Congressman Gerry Connolly, thank you very much for making time this evening.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.